You know, if Ed from 2022 traveled back in time to holler at Ed from 2010 and said, "Player, listen, that little broccoli haired weird kid from Canada with the mixtape you like would be the most influential artist of the past decade." You know what 2010 Ed would say? 2010 Ed would say, "Did they reboot 227 yet? Because that makes more sense than this lie you just sat and told me, future man." But let me tell you something. Lie or not, it's the truth. And today we're going to talk about The Weeknd himself, ranking his albums and mixtapes from bottom to top. What up, players? Thank you once again for joining me for yet another edition of the Soul and Stereo Sessions here on YouTube. If you enjoy this type of content, first and foremost, you up in the right place. Thanks for liking a brother's video. Thanks for subscribing to a brother's video. Oh, wait, did I say that? Yes, I meant hit like, hit subscribe right now if you haven't. Get your life right and help your boy out so I can make some more content going forward. But if you like content like this and YouTube ain't enough for you to get your soul and stereo fix, you can go to soulandstereo.com right now. You can see all sorts of album rankings, album reviews. We got tons of columns. We got decades. I'm talking about plural decades of stuff for you to enjoy, read, and have fun. And watch me get in trouble with your favorite celebrities, because that's what I do. Now, today is all about The Weeknd. I'm talking about the artist, not the day of the week. Anyway, it's funny because depending on what end of the fence you sit on, either The Weeknd is one of the most important, impactful, and powerful artists of the past 10 years, an artist who was able to reimagine R&B and hip hop in his own image thanks to his groundbreaking, weirdo, sparse, zombie dance club, strip club music mixtapes, a sound that went on to permeate, man, everything, even pop music. And then he went and reimagined it again with his 80s inspired synthy sound. So we've got two different types of musical changeovers thanks to one guy. So if that's your thing, he is a groundbreaker. If that ain't your thing, and for some people he's not, Weeknd is like R&B Antichrist. This is the dude that came in, just wrecked shop, took the soul out of the soul that we love, and replaced it with boring robo android sounds. And to be honest, I feel like the truth is in the middle. First of all, you can't blame Weeknd for being innovative. It wasn't his fault that everybody else stole it and ran into the ground. That's not on him. That's on them, especially when he does it better than most. I will give him a little bit of grief, though, over this current 80s sound that he's currently running into the ground. Because at least if you have a sound, it's cool to take it, reimagine it, and push it forward. I feel like right now, every album is the same old, so you get no love on my end for that Weeknd. So some of the hate is justified, some of it isn't. But as you'll see in this ranking, along the way, he has gone on to shape music, for better or worse, like it or not. So, no more ado here. Let's get started and rank Weeknd's albums. And again, we're going to include his mixtapes and EPs here, except the remix EP. We won't do that one. Albums, mixtapes, and EPs, ranking them from bottom to top. Let's get started. Coming in at number 9 is Starboy. This is when Weeknd really fully embraced the synthy pop that kind of we know Weeknd for today. The problem with it, as I said a little bit earlier, is he hasn't really evolved beyond that sound, and that is where we started to see the issues here in Starboy. Starboy is a very bloated album that for the most part sounds like two different songs over and over and over again. So what works really works, and there are 3 or 4 tracks here that really are very strong, but the rest is just all filler, no killer. It's just one song after another that repeats the same sounds, the same beats. And if you like it, cool. If you're the type that likes chocolate ice cream for dinner every day of your life, you're going to love this. But for the rest of us, your teeth are going to rot out. We need a little bit more substance than that. And that's where Starboy falls a little bit flat. It has some good moments, but it has way more repetitive ones. Number 8 is My Dear Melancholy, the EP that at the time I was not a big fan of. So when I went back to create this ranking, I expected to demolish it. I expected to be in last place. It's aged a little bit better than I expected. Mainly, I don't know, maybe I've embraced my inner sad boy since then. I mean, y'all make me sad. Sometimes I look at these comments and no hope for humanity. I'm on my Weeknd today. So anyway, I think that overall, though, it's a little bit better than I remembered, mainly because it's a relatively brief runtime. Also, there are some really solid songs here, so it doesn't really have time to starbore me to death. Starbore me to death is probably a better way to put it, by running too long and getting too in the weeds. It's in and it's out before it kind of makes like too much damage. So while it's not great, it's not really offensive either. Coming in at number 7 is Thursday. So for those who don't remember, The Weeknd came out with a trio of mixtapes during his early run in 2010 and 2011. These would later be released into one anthology called Trilogy. And while I won't be reviewing Trilogy because it's just everything smushed together, I'll be looking at the individual mixtapes. Thursday was number 2 of the series of mixtapes. And it was quite the step down from the original mixtape that we'll get to much later on in the list. It was a little uneven because at this point we were still getting used to Weeknd's alt R&B, if you want to call it that sparse sound, that kind of creepiness that we're come accustomed to now. But this one was a little bit too dry, a little too slow, a little bit too just kind of loose and not consistent enough for me. It felt way more experimental, but not in a good way. It just felt like it was all over the place. Much better days were ahead for our boy, of course, but of the trio, I think this one was by far the weakest. Coming in at number 6 is Dawn FM, Dawn FM. Now I'm sounding like a radio dude. So Dawn FM is Weeknd's most recent album. Really barely a month old at this point, I guess. Producer D Roth will tell us whenever this comes up. But at this point, it's not that old at all. So the album itself was met with mixed reviews, and you can easily see why. First half of the album is the same old Weeknd I've been complaining about. Same old boring 80 cents we've heard 1,000 times. Dude, switch it up. The second half, though, he does switch it up. He kind of has a good mix of that 80s pop sound, but then he dives a little bit back in his dreary demon bag and makes a little bit more of that music that made him famous, that more of that sinister sound, and he takes a minute to experiment. So instead of sounding so much like Knock Off Baby Michael Jackson, a lot of these songs, he sound more like Knock Off Baby Prince. And I like that this experimenting and this evolution is a good way to go. Unfortunately, we just don't get enough of it. So the front half of the album is front loaded with The second half gives us some glimpses of what could be. If it was more of the second, less of the first, this would have been much higher on the list. Again, Weeknd fans, they love it to death because they love everything he does. He can mumble the phone book and it'll be the greatest thing ever. But to me, very hit and miss. Coming in at number 5, speaking of hit and miss, After Hours. No, bro, number 5. You got that album at number 5, After Hours at number 5, bro. What you doing, bro? What you doing? We not doing that this time. No stands today. My blood pressure can't take it. Look, Stan, I feel you, player, but right now you need to go in the kitchen, take the chicken out the freezer before your mom gets home, and have it thawing out so you don't get in trouble. Let the grown folks talk here. Because After Hours is not a bad album, but my Lord, I think it's overrated. And here's why. Again, this is yet another in the series of Weeknd 80 pop synth albums that just kind of does the same thing. There's some big singles, and I don't know if it's because y'all was stuck in the house because of COVID or what. They're good songs, but nothing here to me really stands out as greatness. Everything here is either good or okay. And to me, that makes a good or okay album. But it has gone on to have this legendary almost legacy, mostly thanks to its gigantic showing on the charts. Most of the songs have gone extremely viral. You've seen the gif of Weeknd wandering around in the red coat at the Super Bowl or whatever it is. Like everything associated with this album, down to his face being beat up like the losing screen of Street Fighter 2. I don't know what's going on. But so much of this album has become iconic in meme culture that it seems a lot bigger than it is. When it comes to content, it's a fine album with a few standouts, but so much more okay. So I can't give this one much higher than it's alright. Coming in at number 4 is Echoes of Silence. This is the third of the 3 original Weeknd mixtapes. And if you want to know where those Michael Jackson comparisons started, it kind of started here. Like it picks up, thankfully, it picks up on the energy from the halfway sleepy and dismal Thursday and brings it up a notch. And I think that's why it really stands out a bit more than that previous release. Again, we get the experimentation, we get the bleakness, we get the sparseness, we get the weirdness that can be a give or take depending on your taste, but clearly it found an audience and I appreciated it. And Echoes might not be the best of the mixtapes, but it's a vast improvement over Thursday, which just seemed to be all over the place. This one kind of helped set the ground for Weeknd to become the artist he would be by helping him find himself and his sound. All right, before we hit that top 3, once again, I got to give you that reminder. If you're staring at my beautiful face right now, I hope you've already hit like and subscribe. If you haven't, that's what you need to do right now. Go ahead and hit like, hit subscribe, and that way we can have more videos coming out in the future and more opportunities for me to do this type of content, to connect with y'all, and to get canceled on social media by a bunch of stars. So help me help you, mock me. Coming in at number 3 is Kissland. And boy, people either really like this album or really hate this album. And I guess I can see why, but put me in the love category. I really like it. I call this a bridge album. So we had the 3 initial mixtapes that we talked about throughout this ranking of Weeknd's kind of introduction into the world. And those songs are not radio friendly. I mean, look at the cover of the first mixtape. We'll get to that later on. You ain't putting that nowhere. So this album was an attempt for him to kind of capture and retain that dark sound, but also make it a little radio friendly. He wasn't able to do that yet. He tried. And I appreciated the attempts because what really works here works. And the things that really work best are the ones that kind of sound like the mixtape trilogy. When he deviates from that, you can tell he's still finding his way. He gets lost in the weeds. But the sounds that really harken back to his early days, man, those things still hit. And even though it's quite honestly an acquired taste, if this is your taste of Weeknd, this taste works really well. It's cohesive. Some of the songs do run a little long, I will warn you there. But there is an overall sound that keeps the album together. So if you can get beyond the darkness, the bleakness, and the weirdness, I think you'll find a lot to enjoy. Just call me a weird guy because this one stuck. Coming in at number 2 is Beauty Behind the Madness. In my opinion, this is the best mainstream Weeknd album to date. Remember how I said that Kiss Slam was like a bridge album where he was trying to go from dark mixtape indie weirdo to pop star? He couldn't figure it out there, but he definitely figured it out here. This is an album that has all that you need as far as radio-friendly songs, but still enough creepy weirdo songs to get in trouble when parents walk in and hear their daughter like, what is this weirdo mess you're listening to? That music ain't of the Lord. This is weird stuff. But that's Weeknd for you. He was able to take his sound and successfully permeate it in pop culture, and this is where Weeknd mania for me really started. When you started seeing songs like this starting to like hit the, what is the thing called? The 50 Shades of Grey, that weirdo movie. I looked at that book because everyone hyped it up and said that this book was so great. I promise you, true story, I was in Target and I picked up this book. I read like 2 paragraphs and I was like, this is the most ridiculous stuff. Is this sexy? I mean, this is like SpongeBob SquarePants trying to be a dominatrix. This is not sexy. This is goofy. But whatever, that goofy weirdness is tailor-made for the Weeknd. So his music was a perfect fit for what was going on in pop culture at the time. We got some great songs. Some of his best work to date comes from this. Tell Your Friends. Oh, I love that song. All of that's on this album. Album, great work. And when it comes to mainstream, doesn't get better to date for the Weeknd. Sorry, After Hours fans. And coming in at number 1, probably not a surprise to anybody, is House of Balloons, the original outing for the Weeknd. It's amazing how the 9 little songs on this album mixtape, I should say, would go on to change music across the board. Now, if you're like me, if you've been in this game long enough, if you didn't just appear when Twitter appeared, you know that there's nothing new here. You can go listen to Aaliyah's final album in 2001 and see that she did all of this stuff already, and quite honestly did it better. But he was able to reintroduce that sound to a new audience and do it in a way that was updated, that was totally his own, and he took it and ran in a way that Aaliyah wasn't able to do because we lost her so soon. He built upon that and, quite frankly, built an empire from the sparse from the sparse production, the weird decadent lyrics. I mean, this album just smells like spilled liquor and bad decisions. And that's what has made this such a compelling release. Like it or not, this album really changed the game. And quite honestly, I kind of like it. I liked it then, I like it now. And it's the album, for many people, it's the most Weeknd album of all. Any album encapsulates that crazy man is House of Balloons. The best Weeknd album, mixtape, whatever. So thanks again for joining me on yet another edition of the Soul and Stereo Sessions. Again, if you want to share your picks for your top Weeknd albums, this is the place to do it. Just drop them in the comments below. If you're a stan like Stan, I know what your number 1 is. At least your number 2, if you don't want to go against House of Balloons. But let me know where you stand. Do you hate Kissland? Do you hate Echoes of Silence? Do you love Thursday? Do you think Dawn FM is going to be the best album of 2022, even though 2022 is like a month and a half year old? Get a life. Anyway, let us know below. Share your comments, share your feelings. And again, this session is a wrap. Play on, players.